got a whole bunch of Atari 2600 games, but the real gift, the real prize, is this Atari 2600 catalog. So there's a lot of wow factor for me here with this Atari catalog. This is like a welcome surprise. I had no idea that this was included in my package. So here I got Junior Pac-Man and Solaris and Gorf and Mountain King and Yar's Revenge. So I got 5 games for my Atari Flashback 2 that's been modded by Jimmy Epoch so that it accepts cartridges. Pretty cool. And yeah, I just got this in the package also. It was in the box, and I had no idea that I was getting it, so that's pretty cool. I remember this catalog from when I was a wee little lass, and I was looking through this catalog, and I was like pining over all the various games that existed on the 2600, and I said to myself, one day I hope to own every single one of these games, or maybe not all of the games, but a lot of the games. And yeah, it was like one of those things where, like, growing up, this was what we had to look forward to. The Atari 2600, which was called the Atari VCS long time ago. So yeah, we had Space Invaders, Asteroids, Missile Command, and that was enough. Those games were enough to make us like happy and satisfied that we had a game system that could sort of emulate what the arcade was presenting. And you know what? Those games, those 3 games I just mentioned, were pretty good for the Atari 2600, and they were pretty good for any home system at the time. And yeah, nowadays they look very antiquated, but back then it was like the triple threat. It was like if you had those 3 games, you were pretty much set. You could just play these games at home and you can get a feel for the arcade. So let's take a look at what's inside this Atari catalog. Here's the front page here. It says 49 game program cartridges for the video computer system. Like I said, it was called the VCS before it was called the Atari 2600. The back of it, there you go. Copyright 1982. Yeah, pretty cool. So let's open it up and see what's inside. So, the very first page of this, yeah, it shows this terrible version of Pac-Man. Yeah, this was the game that they kind of banked on. Like, they poured a lot of money into their advertisements for this particular game, and a lot of people, like, they either love it or hate it. Most people hate it because it doesn't look anything like the real Pac-Man game in the arcades, but you know, this was as close as you can get at the time until like other versions of Pac-Man came about. So here we have an introduction to this whole catalog. We don't have to read this, but you can read it on your own. Since I've basically opened it to this page, you can just freeze the video and read this if you'd like. And then we have here the table of contents, which includes Skill Gallery, Classics Corner, Space Station, Adventure Territory, Racetrack, Sports Arena, Combat Zone, and Learning Center. And this looks a little bit like what you would get with the flashback if you were to just turn it on and see the example games that they included in the system. So what is this Atari flashback that I'm talking about here? Like, all of you must be wondering, like, what is she babbling about? Atari flashback. Well, this is a miniature version of the Atari VCS console. And here it's been modded, as you see here, so that it accepts cartridges. So I kid you not, you can actually plug cartridges into this little mini Atari 2600 and play them just as you would on an original Atari 2600 or VCS system. So how did I get this to be like this? This is a modded system. The mod only works with the Atari Flashback 2, and Jimmy Epoch is the one that will convert your Flashback 2 into this modded Flashback 2. So he's an expert at it. He developed the mod, and yeah, it works great. So please go to his webpage and you'll see all of the things that he sells. So he could either sell you an entire package that has a Flashback 2 with the mod in it, or he could convert your existing Flashback 2. So yeah, it's your choice. But the caveat with sending an Atari Flashback 2 to him is the Flashback 2 that you purchase off of eBay might not be a real one. It might be a cheap Chinese knockoff. So if that is the case, then it will not be convertible to this modded version. You have to get an original Flashback 2. So it's best if you just leave it to the expert, Jimmy Epoch, to source a Flashback 2 for you and mod it right then and there. So yeah, that's what I did, and yeah, this works great, like I said. It didn't work on this game, but I think it's more to do with the software itself. I think this cartridge is old and there's something wrong with it. This is Junior Pac-Man, and I'm hoping that this second version of Junior Pac-Man that I have in my 5 cartridge package will work better. This one looks like whoever sent me this package with these 5 cartridges and this catalog, they really took care of these cartridges. Like, I could tell that the person who sold me these is a collector. And yeah, he takes great care in his cartridges, and that's pretty darn cool. And so to just have this is like, this is a bonus. This is like, I feel this is this has more value than the cartridges themselves. This is so cool. This is like a piece of nostalgia from 1982, and I remember it so fondly, this catalog, and now I get to share it with everybody out there. So yeah, if you've never seen this catalog before, yeah, if this is your first time looking at this catalog, you'll see how great it is. You'll see all the money that Atari spent on their advertising and promotion and stuff, and nowadays, companies don't seem to do that anymore. When was the last time that you actually saw a printed manual in a software program? And when was the last time you actually saw a catalog of all of a company's products? It's very rare. It is very rare these days to see something like this. So when you do see something like this, that's amazing. It's just cool. It's just so fun to be able to actually turn the pages of a book, right? A little book, and see all of the different software products that they offer. So here's Demons to Diamonds. And I remember, I think I played all of these games at one time, and I wasn't impressed with a majority of them, but some of the games that I really liked, like Circus Atari, like, the game is so, like, some of these games are so simple, like Breakout and Circus Atari. The graphics are so simple, the gameplay is so simple that it's fun, right? So it doesn't matter sometimes that the graphics are terrible. Sometimes it's gameplay that could carry a game through. So yeah, you have games like Pac-Man where, yeah, it doesn't look like the original Pac-Man. It's still fun though. It just doesn't look like Pac-Man, and the sounds are terrible, and the graphics are terrible, so we just conclude that this must be the best thing that Atari 2600 can do, graphics-wise and sound-wise and stuff. And that's not the case, because there are versions out there, homebrewed versions of Pac-Man, that look so much better than this. There are homebrew versions of Pac-Man that look just like the arcade, or very close anyway. I'm not going to say just like the arcade, but it looks very close. And it's a really proper rendition of Pac-Man out there in the homebrewed world. So yeah, do check it out. Go do your research and find the homebrewed version of Pac-Man. It is so good. So here's Skydiver right here. I think that's a little silly, this game. I think all of these games in the skill gallery are kind of like suspect. Video Pinball, So Breakout is always a classic. Super Breakout is always a classic. So yeah, Circus Atari, and basically I think that's about it in the skill gallery. So let's look at the classics corner and what they think of as classics. It seems like it's like board games, right? So here it is. Backgammon, Casino, Othello, 3D tic-tac-toe, video checkers, and video chess, So if you like these kinds of games, maybe this is for you. Yeah, but for me, it's like I'd rather play an arcade game on an arcade device, not a board game on an arcade device. So that's just me. So here's Space Station, and I think there's going to be a lot of cool games ahead here, like Asteroids, right? So wait, Berserk. So all of you know, perhaps most of you know, that there's a new version of Berserk, and it says here, estimated availability August 1982. There's a new version of Berserk that actually has voice in it. So it's basically Berserk, except they've added voice, and they've added the ability for the robots to shoot diagonally at you. Now in the arcade, they shoot diagonally and also in the 4-axis directions. But the original version of Berserk on the 2600 VCS just had the robots shooting in the 4 compass directions, not diagonally. So here, with the new version of Berserk that's sold on Atari's website, you can get the voice things in there, as well as the 8-directional shooting from the robots. And that's pretty cool. Those two things alone are worth the price of the new Berserk cartridge. So here, Star Raiders, I remember playing that with the extra control module. There was like an extra device that had buttons. It was a button pad thing. And I was like, this looks like it could have potential. I just didn't like it that much. I thought that the graphics were just okay, and a lot of people were just like wowed by it over, like, back in the day, back in 1982. And I think they were wowed by it because it has a lot of depth in the game. So there's a lot of things to explore and kill and things like that. So I think that's why this was like very, very popular with a lot of people back then. So here, Asteroids. Yeah. Defender. Sadly, Defender was like kind of cheesy because every time you shot a laser out of your Defender ship, then it blinked, and it was just horrible, the graphics. But they have a better version of Defender out there for all of you Defender lovers out there, and I think they have Stargate as well, and that's really good too. So Missile Command, always a classic. I love Missile Command, even with this simplified version of Missile Command that has the bullets, or the missiles, shooting only out of the center console here. In the arcade, you can shoot from any of the 3, and the ones in the ends would usually have like slower fire than the one in the center, so you'd have to use a different strategy to shoot from the end cannons rather than the center cannon. But still, the gameplay, the basic gameplay is here. Like, you'll have a lot of fun with this. You can do the sweep thing if you'd like. You can sweep across and keep firing, and you can create like a wall of explosions to counteract these missiles from afar. Pretty cool. Space Invaders, always a classic. Even though the game looks like simplified compared to the original, the arcade version, this is still a lot of fun, and a lot of the same basic game mechanics are still there, and yeah, there's so many different variations. I'm going to tell you that the cool thing about these Atari cartridges is they will list all these different variations on their gameplay manual. On the box, it says right here, 112 games. Now, this is really one game, right? But you have 112 variations of it. So there's one-player mode, two-player mode. There's all these different things that happen, like you get faster invaders, things like that, invaders that are closer to you to begin with. So all these different variations add to the replay value of each of these cartridges. So even though you might be bored of a certain game after, like, say, a day, you have 111 other versions of Space Invaders to play, and so you don't have to be so bored in the coming days. So that's pretty cool. And so some of these other games here don't quite have 112 versions. Like here, we have Asteroids has 66 versions of the game. Defender just has 1 or 2 players. Missile Command has 34 different versions of the same game. Yeah, so there's a lot of replay value with a lot of these game cartridges. That's all I have to say. And I would say that really adds to the fun of these game cartridges. And I think that there's not enough of that these days. There's not enough variation in games these days. You generally press the start button and then you go explore. That's how a lot of games seem to be, and there's not a lot of like variations other than changing the difficulty level from like easy, normal, and hard, and that's about it. But yeah, back then there were like all different kinds of variations of games. So Space War, that doesn't look very much like the arcade Space War. Yara's Revenge is a classic. Everybody loves it. I'm probably the only one that doesn't like it that much, but you know what? I get to play it as much as I want now, and maybe it'll change my mind. Like, at first I thought it was kind of silly, but a lot of people really love it for whatever reason, and I'll just give it another go and see if I like it in my, like, older state. So here, Adventure Territory, let's see what games they have. Oh, they've got a Superman game, it says right here. So here we go. They've got 3 games on offer back in 1982, Adventure, Haunted House, and Superman. And if any of you are like adventure, like explorer, the dungeon type fans out there, then these 2 games are it. It's like a lot of people swear by these games. They think that these games are like 2 of the top games on the Atari 2600. Now, for me personally, I don't really like moving around in a dungeon and kind of crawling around, exploring and stuff like that. That's not my cup of tea, but a lot of people like that. So yeah, these 2 games might be for you. And Superman is kind of like stupid, but you can check it out if you'd like. It's worth a try. Maybe you'll like this too. So Racetrack. Okay, so there were a lot of racing games on the Atari 2600, and like this can't really be called a racing game, this Dodge'em, but it's really fun. You're just moving around this track in one direction, and you are trying to pick up as many dots as possible, right? So it's a little Pac-Man-esque in that regard, and you have to avoid crashing into these other vehicles that are kind of going head-on. They're trying to crash into you, and you have to basically develop a strategy by moving between these non-walled segments right here. There's 4 non-walled segments, and you have to try to move around and try to avoid the cars that are trying to collide into you, all the while trying to collect all the dots on the board to be able to move on to the next board. So it's very fun, very cool, very simple game, but very fun. So here, Indy 500, it looks decent for an Atari 2600 game, and it might not be as graphically impressive as the arcade version, but the arcade version wasn't really that graphically impressive. So I would say that, this is like a fun game, even in this simplified state, and I think you'll enjoy it a lot. And here, Night Driver, yeah, this is a game that requires a paddle control, and you're speeding along at a breakneck speed down this nighttime highway, and it is really fun. It is like one of the more fun games, I think, on the Atari 2600. Even though the graphics are so simple like this, it's still very fun. This was our pole position before pole position was invented, and so this is like, yeah, it's fun. You just got to try it. Slot Racers, I don't think I have too much experience with that. It looks a little bit like Yarg in the arcade, but I don't think you shoot any. Yeah, you do. There's missiles. So this is Yarg, I suppose. So I'm a huge Yarg fan from the arcade. Like, that was one of my favorite games in the arcade for whatever reason. It's just, to me, it kind of like made sense because it was like easy enough for me to like pick up, and there was like this weird physics thing going on with Yarg where if you hold down on the joystick in one direction for a long time, then it makes your car go faster, and then you have to kind of learn to slow it down before you can turn a corner. So that was very challenging for me, and that was like very cool. I liked the physics in Yarg. So I'm not sure if Slot Racers has that same kind of physics, but if it does, then yeah, then I would highly recommend it. So Street Racer, kind of cheesy graphics, simple racing game that you go head to head against somebody else. And let's see, that's it for racing games. And then Sports Arena. Now, I'm just going to preface this by saying that Atari made some kind of like clunkers in the sports arena type genre, but there are other sports games out there that, like, later, I think the Real Sports series, which might be an Atari thing also, I think that really showed off some impressive games. But the initial set initial collection of sports games were kind of dismal, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So here, let's go here. Basketball, right? So you got this one-on-one thing going on. So you might think, oh, this is like Dr. J versus Larry Bird from Electronic Arts from long ago. No, not really, but maybe. But it's much simpler than that, so I don't recommend it. Bowling is kind of stupid. And football, here you go. 3 football players versus 3 football players. Yes, you heard that right. You have 3 players on your team, and that's it. So that does not equal football to me. I'm sorry. So golf, that looks very cheesy. Look how big your character is. Home run, that looks really cheesy too. Pele soccer, that looks cheesy also. It looks like it's another 3-on-3 kind of affair. So yeah, they can't add too many characters. Like in the initial days when people were programming on the Atari 2600, they couldn't add too many characters on screen at the same time, because then you get this blinky effect like in Pac-Man. Now, I have to say that the graphics look very simplified here. It looks like these people are all represented by lines rather than like people type shapes. Like at least here they tried to make a people type shape in football, but here it's just lines, and I think that's very boring. So, and then we have Video Olympics, which is like variations of Pong, right? So you have 50 games, 50 variations of Pong in Video Olympics. So to me, that's just junk. Okay, so the next section has Combat Zone, and so for all you people who enjoy the pack-in combat game, that's supposed to be the game that is included as the pack-in for the Atari 2600, you'll enjoy this section here. So here we have here, combat right here. So there's 27 different variations of games here in combat, and yeah, I remember this very first pack-in game that I played, I was like, this is kind of cool. I can like rotate the tank and shoot in 8 different directions, and yeah, it's pretty cool. But it was like a one-on-one kind of affair, right? So after a while, if you don't have somebody else to play with, then it's kind of stupid. So here, because it does say 2 players, right? So it's not for 1 player, it's for 2 players. So here, Canyon Bomber, this is kind of fun, right? You don't need complex graphics for this. You basically just pilot your plane. Like, you don't even pilot the plane. The plane goes by itself, and you just strategically drop the bombs whenever you feel like you're above a block, right? So you're trying to destroy as many of these colored blocks as possible, thereby beating your opponent. So 8 games in that, 8 variations, 1 or 2 players. Here is Air, Sea, Battle. So it's just like a shooting gallery type of game. So here Outlaw is just one-on-one. It's kind of stupid. And Warlords. Now a lot of people, just like Yara's Revenge, a lot of people swear by Warlords. They love it. It's a paddle control game. It's 1 to 4 players. So yeah, you can really get like hooked on something like this. And I never really got hooked on something like that. So oh well. So Learning Center. So these are the boring games for kids, such as Math Grand Prix. Basic Programming. Please don't program anything on this basic programming thing. I've never seen a good game come out of this. It's more like for testing purposes, so that you can learn the very, very simplest of basic programming skills on here. Then there's these brain games, Code Breaker, Game of Concentration, and Hangman. So I do not recommend any of these games at all. And here we have accessories, so you can have a cartridge library in a book right here, and you can have this nice little wall slot game program case that you can hang on your wall with all of your games in there. I'm sure most people have more than this many cartridges in their library of Atari 2600 games. And here, coming attractions, it says. It's talking about some of the games that might come up soon. And because Real Sports wasn't in here, not produced yet, then you don't see the Real Sports games in the sports section here. But the Real Sports games, do check it out, do your research on them, and you'll see some very impressive for the 2600, very impressive games for the Atari 2600. Yes, and that's it. That's the last page. So yes, this is, as you saw, a preview of this Atari catalog from yesteryear, from 1982. Very, very cool. So everybody, if you like this video, please slam the like button, subscribe to my channel. You'll see more videos just like this one. And until next time, everybody, see you. Bye.